Hey YouTube, Emery Dog VW here, in the kitchen this time and not out in the garage. Fresh back from Dizzy's birthday party. And if you didn't make it, it was an absolute awesome time. I took a couple cheesecakes with me, and often when I take cheesecakes anywhere for the first time, I get a few questions about techniques and recipes and those things. So I thought maybe I'd do a little three-part mini series on making a cheesecake. The first part will be just looking at equipment and the things that I use and the techniques that I use, and then the second one will be actually making a cheesecake. I've got a couple to make for my sister-in-law's wedding this weekend, and then lastly kind of decorating them up. So hope you guys can see everything. I've got some things laid out. If you just starting, you decide you want to make a cheesecake, I highly recommend that you get a springform pan. And they're called springform because the bottoms come out of them and they have a little spring attachment for the sides. You don't have to have a springform pan, but it certainly helps, especially if you're a novice. I have some other items here that we can look at. I have some other different types of pans that have a removable bottom. Those are usable as well. One of the things you might notice on a springform pan is that there is a lip that goes on the bottom of the pan, and one of the first things that you kind of learn is that it makes it easier to remove the cheesecake if you flip this upside down. Now that does kind of lessen some of the overall height of your cheesecake, but in the long run it's a lot easier. So that's kind of what I use. One of the things I also like to do, I've got a piece of wax paper here, not parchment paper, but I use parchment paper, and I usually like to go underneath or over top of the bottom of the pan, and then I like to pinch that inside, and I do that because this makes it easier when you're done to release the cake from the bottom of the pan. And I like to use it as a fulcrum as well, so when I'm done with the cake, I kind of grab the bottom and use it to pull, and I can pull my cake off the bottom and onto whatever cake plate or device I'm going to put it on, plate, whatever I'm going to put it on as well. Lately, I've been going, and I found at my local Walmart, they have parchment papers that are cut out in the exact size. These happen to be, I don't know, 7 or 8 inch ones that work really well, but again, it's just a circle. It's up to you what you'd like to use. Once I get the cake made, and before it goes into the oven to bake, one of the things I like to do is I like to use a water bath. And a water bath is where you place your cake in another pan and you fill that with water. And you do that because as the cake bakes, the outside will bake quicker than the inside. So if you have water up against it, it will cool the outside so that hopefully it bakes evenly all the way across. And when you do that, you get a really flat top cheesecake, which is what I like. For years, I would just use aluminum foil, and I would put my cake down, put aluminum foil over top of it, and that's not always enough to guarantee that no water gets in it. So sometimes I would double my aluminum foil, which over time gets a little pricey, and that's when I found this. This is a silicone sleeve, and the person who markets it as the perfect cheesecake. And this is a silicone sleeve that's designed to fit these perfectly, and it has handles, and you can put this inside your larger pan and the water comes up the sides of it, and it's perfect. And I have further taken this a little step further in that I just buy silicone cake pans, and I buy them in sizes that work for the size of cheesecake pans that I have. I don't know, probably 2 dozen of these in different shape sizes, but I just buy them to fit. Now they don't have the handles like this one does, and this one wasn't too pricey. I think I paid $35 for it, but the other ones are a lot more affordable. You can usually pick them up for under $10 at least, which is awesome. So that's what I use as well. Oftentimes when I make a cheesecake and it comes out of the oven, I'm gonna decorate it. So I just have, you know, regular reusable pastry bags and tips and those things. And I do have a stand mixer. I have a really nice KitchenAid stand mixer, and it works really well. But I have found that when I'm making 1 or 2 cheesecakes, just the regular hand mixer works, you know, perfect for me. As a matter of fact, you don't need a mixer at all. I've seen a couple videos out there where individuals actually make a cheesecake just using their hands. They put gloves on and mix it all by hand, just to show you that you don't need any equipment. And that's fine. That's a great way to do it. But for me, just a regular mixer works fine because it's so much easier to clean up. So if I'm going to do a big batch of icing, or I'm going to make a wedding cake or something like that, yes, I'll get the big mixer out. But for just 1 or 2, it's perfectly fine to have those. And then when I'm done, obviously, you know, some cake rounds or a cake pan or a stand, whatever I'm going to put it on, is pretty much the way I do it. Now, as far as recipes are concerned, you know, a basic New York style cheesecake that you would find, you know, would be for every 1 block of cream cheese, you're going to use 1 egg, and you're going to use just a little bit more than 1/3 of a cup of sugar. So for something like this cheesecake, which is a 9-inch cheesecake, then I'm probably going to use 4 of these, which means that, you know, I'm going to be into it, you know, maybe about 1.5 cups of sugar, and then 4 eggs. New York style cheesecake has an addition of sour cream and maybe a little bit of heavy cream. I've seen some people who put cornstarch in it, but it's not absolutely necessary. If you want a dense, really good tasting cheesecake that you bake in the oven, then just straight up cream cheese, sugar, eggs, and a little vanilla goes a long way to making a really, really good tasting cheesecake. Sometimes you'll see people who they'll make their cheesecakes, and not only do they put parchment paper on the bottom in between their crust and the bottom of the pan, but they will also take their parchment paper and cut strips, and then they will wrap it along the outside and go all the way around the outside, and that's to help the outside release and maybe look a little prettier. I find this very tedious, and to be honest with you, the results are not any different than if you just don't use it at all. Sometimes what I do is I will take a little cooking spray, a little Pam, whatever, and just lightly coat the outside edges. Even that's not absolutely necessary, because as the cheesecake cools, it will pull away from the sides a little bit. After you bake it and it comes out, and before you go in the refrigerator, if you just kind of run a knife around the outside, it's going to come out perfect. And for the most part, when I'm making cheesecakes, I'm putting icing on it, or I'm using some chocolate ganache, and I'm covering up the sides, and the sides look good anyway. And I'll show you, there's tips and tricks you can do to make the sides look pretty if you really want to. But that's pretty much the basics of getting started. And I'm going to cut away from this video, and then when we come back, I'll have things laid out, and we'll actually start making a cheesecake, and you guys can follow along. See you in the next one.